Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by DataTalks.Club, which is a community of people who love data. Every time I say that, I remember that when this automatic speech recognition software processes this, it recognizes what I say is DataDogs.Club, not DataTalks.Club. I need to work on my articulation, so this AT is um, how to say text. Anyways, so these recognizers can actually deal with my accent. So let's see, DataTalks.Club. Anyways, we have quite a few events in our pipeline. Although recently we had quite a few already. Anyways, if you want to stay up to date with all the events we have, there is a link in the description. Go there, click, and you'll see all the events we have. Also, you will probably see you can subscribe to our newsletter too. We constantly send reminders about future events. Then do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This way you'll stay up to date with all the events, future streams that we have. And I'm just curious how many subscribers we have. So I think this is right now 66,000.
Wow.
So this is pretty outdated. So if you want to be 66,001, do it now. And then last but not least, you do not forget to, like, we have a Slack community. If you want to hang out with other data enthusiasts, check it out. What else? Yeah, last thing, if you have any questions that you want to ask during the interview, there is a pinned link in the live chat. Click on that link, ask your questions, and we will be covering these questions during the interview. So this intro that I do, it's the same every time. So for me, it gets a little boring, so I improvise a little. But when I improvise, I kind of forget what I was talking about. Anyways, so let me clear my throat 1 second. Sorry. Yeah, I think I'm good. So, Ranjita.
Yes, Alexei.
If you're ready,
Yes.
we can start.
Yeah.
Today on the podcast, we are joined by Rangita, staff ML engineer at NewBird AI, previously at Dropbox, building LLM and agent-powered products with also with earlier work in speech recognition and NLP at Microsoft and research at Carnegie Mellon. You have quite a nice career journey, so it's a big pleasure to have you here on our event.
The pleasure is mine.
Okay, so tell us about your career journey. Can you tell us about your career journey so far? I think I outlined,
Yeah.
but this
Yeah,
is
that's
pretty
a
interesting. I see you have worked at quite a few companies. So yeah, please tell us more.
yeah, definitely. So I think in a nutshell, my career is basically machine learning, NLP, from the start. And the way it started was actually during my undergrad. That was my first time that I came across this stuff. And this was when in 2011 or 2010, I think. We didn't really have many courses on AI or, any
Yeah.
structured way of learning back then. But my friends and I, we were curious, so we just got building something like an image search engine. And this was like, back when it was using a Sundance search engine, and then OpenCV for like extracting features from images and so on and so forth. And it was
Was
just
this
so
back of Visual Words or how this approach was called?
it was kind of like that. So kind of extracting features from the
Uh,
images and doing segmentation
those
and
times.
yes. It was then.
Yeah. I'm
And
glad we don't need to do this stuff anymore.
yeah, I'm so glad to. But it was hard to do, but it was so like, it
Yeah.
got me hooked onto this whole space.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to learn more, and that's what brought me to, CMU doing my master's there. And I learned a lot of stuff from amazing profs and amazing, colleagues and, some startups that were there locally in Pittsburgh as well. And from then I joined Microsoft, where I did, of course, speech recognition, language modeling for, Xbox, Bing search, Bing voice search, Cortana, these kind of things, and really met some amazing people that have been doing this for many years, and I just got to learn so much from them. Then I wanted to broaden my scope in ML a little bit, so that's what kind of brought me to go to Dropbox. And there I started working on recommendation systems initially. And
What
then
kind of recommendation systems
it's
are
like
there?
content,
I've
file
been a
suggestions,
user.
and
I've
yeah,
been a
yeah.
user of Dropbox since, I don't know, for so many
Oh,
years.
really?
I don't
Nice.
remember it recommending me a single thing.
Dropbox Web. So this was basically if you go to Dropbox.com, you get suggestions on like what files we think you might open based on, your
Ah, okay, I
activities and
understand. I
stuff like that.
understand. Since I don't use Dropbox through the web, for me it's just
Yeah,
a folder.
right, right.
But when I go open Google Drive, I see recommendations. You say, okay,
Right.
these are the files you're interested in. So Dropbox has something similar, right?
Dropbox has something like that.
Got it.
Yes,
Got
yes,
it.
yes. Yeah, it has had it for a while. So
Uh-huh.
I worked on that feature and I have some auxiliary things around it. Trying to improve the quality of it, and that's where I think I dabbed a lot more into neural networks, trying to understand how these things work. Because when I started my career, neural networks weren't a thing yet. So I learned a lot on my job. Then I somehow made my way back into NLP and started working on building first question answering system. So it was like an incubation team at Dropbox that wanted ML expertise, and then I went and joined them and worked on this question answering system. And then later, that led to me and my then manager is an amazing mentor and amazing engineer himself, and we both kind of started a new team which focuses on agents. And this was back then we didn't really have the term agents as popular yet. So we
When was
had
it?
2022 December.
Uh-huh.
So it was like,
Because I imagine now when you say Q&A system for Dropbox,
yeah.
I have like ding 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 rock. But now everyone
Yes,
knows
now
that, right?
everybody knows it. Yeah.
Because you can
Yeah.
just take all the documents you have in Dropbox,
Eh,
index them, and here you go. But back
Exactly.
then, I guess it wasn't as obvious as these
It just
days.
wasn't. Yeah. So it was, I mean, we were trying to innovate. So it was not just on Dropbox. So we were like, okay, what other data sources can we do and how can we make it, better and better? And just then, like, I was fine-tuning T5, for example, right? And then after that, then GPT 3.5 came, and then, it like totally disrupted the whole market. And
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
just
so
so much
good.
easier.
Like
Yeah.
compared to 3, it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it was real fun. And that brings basically after working on agents at Dropbox last couple of years, I think it brought me to like what can agents do, right? And that's how this startup caught my eye, NewBird, which is where I am right now. And I'm fully immersed in the potential that these agents have. We're trying to solve this problem of um, engineering on call. How do we take that away from users and make agents be on call for us so that we can focus on the more fun building part of the system.
That's
uh,
interesting. So I'm wondering how SREs take that. I mean,
as
as a developer, I would
right.
be actually quite happy to be not to be on call, right? Not
Yes,
to have pager
exactly.
duty. So,
Exactly.
because I was a data scientist, I was not on call.
Uh-huh.
But I remember my colleagues who were software engineers,
Hmm.
they had to be with their laptop. So when
Yeah.
they receive like a notification from PagerDuty or whatever we used,
Hmm.
they would just open their laptop and check the logs and do all this stuff. So
Yes.
probably for them, they are like, it's good not to do these things anymore.
You are lucky. So even if I have been doing machine learning forever, but I have had to be on call many, many times.
Yeah,
And I totally get the pain when you get woken up at 3 o'clock in the night,
yeah.
you're sleeping and you have to wake up and go,
That's
fix
why
this
you
thing.
decided to join the company,
Yes,
right?
I can get behind this vision.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I'm here.
Do you know where the name comes from?
I actually don't know. I think the founders are just a lot into birds.
But Neubert, as I mentioned, Neu means new in German. So I wonder
Right.
if it has or maybe Neubert was already taken and they are like, okay, well, what do we
New
do
bird.
now?
Yes, I will ask them this.
Yeah, because I guess uh, right now it's very difficult to start a startup
Mm,
because all the domain names are already taken, right? Like,
yes,
how
yes.
can you come up with a name that is not taken, but also doesn't sound like gibberish?
Yeah. There's a lot
Quite
of
a big
creative names
challenge.
these days. Yeah.
Because I remember, you know Kaggle, right?
Mhm,
So Kaggle, I was interviewed probably with Anthony Goldblum, his last name. Anyways, with one of the creators,
mhm,
and what they did in order to come up with the word Kaggle,
mhm,
they would write a script that
mhm.
would just go through all the relatively short names
Oh,
that sound okay and check if they're available. So this is how they did
fun.
this. Yeah. So what do you do at NewBird?
So yeah, I'm basically building agents and everything around it, the whole agent
Mhm.
ecosystem. It's actually just been like 4 weeks since I joined, and I'm already like, I can understand the sheer complexity of the problem,
Ah, you
thinking
just
about it. So
joined.
yeah, I just joined like a month ago, and
Oh,
I
congratulations.
thank you. So yeah, just trying to build the whole, the story of how LLM agents can actually do this more reliably and more in a way
Hmm.
that, our customers, if they're happy today, they're still happy tomorrow, things
Hmm.
like that.
You've been in the industry for quite some time.
Hmm.
Also, you started machine learning in 2010.
Hmm.
Um, so the word, at least my interest in machine learning, I started it around 2012,
Hmm.
a little later.
Hmm.
And I remember taking courses about reinforcement learning.
Hmm.
And there, the concept of an agent was defined differently. So
Right,
I'm
right,
just curious, like, how do you define an agent? What is an agent in your opinion?
right. Okay, this is like something I usually start all my talks with this.
Yeah,
What is an agent? Because
because
it's not a very well understood concept, right?
yeah, I'm really curious. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, the agents, the way back when you're talking about reinforcement learning agents, that's basically the task. The definition was simple. There's a task, and these agents have to go complete it. And agents are basically these automated pieces of, software that would go and complete a given task, given the goal, objective, and then you're kind of tuning yourself to kind of go improve upon that task, and
Mm,
so that you're increasing or decreasing the objective function as as required. So now it's not that far from that definition. The core of it still remains the same. It's about autonomously going and completing a task that was given to them. And right now, it somehow has honed into LLMs being at the core of it all. LLMs are powering these agents. LLMs are the brain of these agents. And what defines a type of agent, because everybody is building agents and not two of them are alike. Everyone has been coming up with their own recipes for building agents, and what that brings in is how you're orchestrating multiple calls to LLMs, calls to tools, calls to some knowledge store, and so on, things like that. So an agent is at the end of the day something that performs a task that is given to it autonomously with the help of LLMs tools, some kind of memory and storage, and things like that to basically please the user.
mhm. Okay. Yeah, I was actually experimented with agents too
Mhm.
the other day, and I thought, like, can I do make an agent without an LLM?
Mm,
And the answer is actually yes, right? So we
mm,
need a thing that can make decisions.
yeah,
So right now we delegate the decisions to an LLM. So LLM is the brain, the
right.
decision maker, but it can be something simple like a bunch of heuristics, and
Mm,
depending of
yeah,
what kind of agent we are talking about. So in my case,
right.
it was just some environment where
Mm,
um, I had people who were applying for jobs and people like employees. So
mhm,
employers, one type of entity, people, job seekers, the other type of entity, and they were interacting with each other, right? So like people
mm,
have skills, then these employers, they have vacancies like job positions
mm.
for which they require certain skills, and then the goal
You
is to
match
like,
them.
and
Yeah.
then it was just I created this environment and I ran simulation
Mm,
there. And
nice.
um, yeah, and there without any LLMs, they could actually
Yeah.
do something. But of course, once you add an LLM, you can have one thing talk to another thing. So let's say we have an interviewer asking a question, and then they make a decision at the end. Okay, do we want to hire that person? But I abandoned this project like many others. But it was fun still.
Fun side project.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah. Would you agree with this definition? Because
Mm,
it seems these days,
mm.
agent is just an LLM that has tools that can make decision to use tools. Would you just say an agent is equals LLM with tools?
It's not just that. So there is that wrapper around it, which kind of
Mm,
has the way you plan. It can differ a lot
mm,
when it comes to the types of agents you're building. So we had come up with this classification system earlier for, kind of classifying like a taxonomy of sorts,
mhm,
where an agent can complete a given task in, let's say, one single step, or it can take multiple steps. By step, what I mean is like maybe calling a tool or something like processing information or something like that.
mhm,
And so depending on if it's single step or multi-step, it can get more complex. And then there is also this thing of how many iterations of this are you going to do? Like, how many times is there a feedback loop around it? Is it a single pass that you just go from start to end? Or is it like a multi-pass thing where you're, constantly checking what you have planned so far, and constantly asking, maybe the same LLM asks itself, self-reflecting or things like that, and then
mhm,
going and correcting multiple times and saying, oh, you know what, I had this plan earlier, but looking at the current output, it doesn't look like I should continue with my plan. I should probably go back and change. And
mhm,
these kind of multi-pass systems make most like complex type of agents, and these
mhm,
are the ones that everybody is trying to head towards. But a lot of us, like, we start off with this single step or single pass kind of system
mhm,
where, we have a plan, let's take this plan and go execute it in a way that makes the goal come true.
mhm,
And yeah, and then with like some amount of like plan checking,
mhm,
self-reflection, things like that.
mhm.
So
And
mhm,
yeah, you mentioned what is different in these agents is the way you plan. Because I
mhm,
can have an agent that doesn't have any LLM at all, right?
mhm,
Like I
mhm,
mentioned.
mhm.
Probably if I ask it to give me to create me a Django project, it will not be able to execute that.
Yeah. Mm,
If I give it to a simple LLM,
mhm,
like I don't know, for all mini, then
mhm.
it would be able to create something, but maybe not as elaborate as a reasoning model,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, and the plan can be something that is super dynamic that, gets built as we go, or it could be something that you already have a predetermined path of, like in your agent example that you gave earlier, you had
mm,
a fixed task, so and it had a fixed set of tools, and you know how to orchestrate.
mm,
Step A comes before step B, and so on and so forth. So that could be something with just like some a bit of if-else statements. You've got yourself a path, right? The plan
mhm,
doesn't always have to be dynamic.
mhm,
So I've seen those kind of agents as well. So that's
mhm.
that's another way.
How is this implemented? Like if we talk about, so
Mm,
the typical way we implement an agent, let's say
mm,
I take a framework like Agentic
mm,
AI,
mm,
or I take, I don't know, Agents SDK, and
mm,
then there, what I have is I can have the system prompt,
mm.
right? And there's user prompt, and then I define tools. So
Right.
let's say I say that there is some system prompt where I describe the task I give, the task of the agent, right? And then there is user input that specifies the thing the
Mhm,
user wants,
mm.
and then the agent starts invoking tools in order to do this, right?
Right.
Where the planning, where does planning come
Mhm.
from? Where does it appear?
So in this case, when you're talking about the predefined tools and SDKs, they
Uh,
they have this logic embedded in them of how they want you to plan. So the prompts that you're giving are the ones prompt and tools. That's the one that is kind of defining how the plan gets generated, right? But when we are talking about, like, most people, what they end up doing, most startups or even big companies, we end up defining our own agentic platform, right? We end up defining our own set of tools, SDKs, and so on to build an agent. And it's also it's very hard to build this in a generic way. easier if you kind of focus on the problem that you're trying to solve and see what type of agents make sense. So there's another distinction where you see some agents are, planning in plain English, and some agents are doing this in like code agents, right? So that is another thing. So that depends on like what is the type of task you're trying to solve,
Hmm.
is it super complex? Like talking, if something that can be solved by talking with each other, like, in natural language, those kind of problems are okay to be solved with like a natural language based agent. But if there is a very complex task, you have to like plan like 100 steps and, go this way, that way, and, there's conditionals and all that. In that case, you would want something that is more programmatic in nature. So I'm a big fan of that latter side, mainly because like that's the kind of agents we kind of came up with a lot of experimentation. So it just feels like a lot of use cases can fit into that code agent type of system where it's
Hmm.
just less ambiguity, more kind of predictability.
Can you talk about the agents you use at work right now, or it's not
Um,
something you can share?
I mean, I can't share too much in detail, but it's basically
Yeah.
the
Yeah, I'm
agents.
just curious, what are you working on specifically? Like,
Yeah.
what kind of agents? Of course, you cannot share or shouldn't share a lot, but also in many cases, the devil is in details, right?
Right,
So,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I
uh,
can tell you like at a high level, basically the agents are trying to build a right context to present to the LLM, right? So it's a lot of it is, I think a lot of people are talking about it these days called context engineering. But I think this is something that we had to bake in from the time I've been working on agents, because back then we had models that, had 4K context window. You don't have the luxury of stuffing everything into the context. So you have to be very deliberate about what it is that you're kind of sending to the LLM. And what we learned in that process is that when you're doing that, you're not losing much. You learn to kind of put the context into LLM's windows by, only providing, oh, how do you define it? Like something like the metadata or the way to plan and things like that. So you ask the LLM, hey, what are the steps to do something like this, right? Rather than saying, giving it all the data and saying, these are all the documents I have. Can you
mm,
go dig into it and, find me the right answer
yeah.
and things like that, right? So it's a lot to do with context engineering, and even at NewBird, we are doing a lot of that,
Hmm.
trying to reduce the noise that you feed into LLMs. And
Hmm.
it's a complex agentic system that they have built here even before I joined, right? So, and it's so many tools. If you can imagine being an SRE, what would you
Yeah.
do, right? You have to look at so many different data sources, different
Hmm.
logs and metrics
Yeah.
and
So
tables.
I imagine, so let's say I am on call
Mm,
and I receive a message saying that this system is failing, right? And
mm,
then I open whatever thing for logs, then I
yeah.
investigate the logs, then I go to Kubernetes,
Mm,
then I check the, I don't know, deployment pods, whatever, find out like who the logs and try to find out the reason.
yeah.
I may go to the source code to actually see where the issue is coming from, and maybe I do a quick fix or I roll back to the previous version, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I would
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Um, does the system you have kind of mimics this
Yeah,
behavior?
it does mimic that kind of behavior in its own special way. Something's wrong with my camera, it keeps going off. Yeah, it's basically um, this is the way you as an SRE would do something like this. But an agent at the end of the day is like basically now like 23, 24 of us are building it together, right? So it's all of our personalities go into it, and it's what wins eventually is something that's that can do it again and again repeatedly, that can solve a
Hmm.
problem again and again. What our customers come and like, we get a customer email saying, yeah, this really worked well for us, and those are the
Hmm.
things that we learn from. That is the feedback that we get. As a startup,
Hmm.
you don't yet have that much luxury of that much data to look at, right? You're waiting
Hmm.
for these individual customer feedback. And with like our team is amazing in the sense I'm new to startups, and when I look at it, I'm like so amazed by it.
Hmm.
Everybody is like harping on anything that is like, if a user says something is not working, everybody goes and,
Hmm.
okay, it should have done this, it didn't do it,
Hmm.
and how do we fix it? And that's the kind
Hmm.
of mentality that's
Hmm.
going to propel this
Yeah.
startup forward. Yeah.
And I just, what occurred to me is every setup, like infrastructure,
Yeah.
can vary drastically from company to company. One
True.
company can use, I don't know, DataDog, another uses New Relic, the third one uses something built
Yeah.
in-house built in on Prometheus.
Yeah.
Then, I don't know, there's ELK or ELK, right, from
Yeah.
based on Elasticsearch. Like there are so many different tools. And then some use Kubernetes, some use, I don't know, God knows what, like whatever
Right.
deployment
Right. Right. Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Um, there is such a variety.
Mm,
How do you,
mm.
like, you have to at some point restrict and say, okay, I work only with this stack, or what do you do?
True, true. I mean, there is that thing where there is a cap after which you kind of say, we will keep these as highest priority and, deprioritize some of them. But the challenge of this, that's the beauty of these agentic systems, right? You kind of bake in this generality in which you abstract away the details of what API am I talking to, what kind of data am I looking at. You abstract
Mm-hmm.
that away so that your implementation is generic enough to kind of it's just a matter of building those connections with
Uh-huh.
the agent. So if you have people building connections for you as and when a new kind of data source becomes available, then you're mostly good. There are peculiarities, of course. There'll be like, a particular data source might come with its own peculiarities where, no, we will write the log in a reverse fashion where we'll put status codes in the end and we'll write the error message before it. There are things like that too that happens.
Mm-hmm.
For those things you kind of have to have domain knowledge. Unfortunately, there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing that
Mm-hmm.
you can't magically do this, and that's where you consult SREs. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of get, we have an SRE
Yeah,
in
yeah.
our
Okay.
team as well. He's like the
So you have
most.
an SRE, you don't fully delegate it to agents yet.
No, 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 it's all agents, but yeah, yeah, one SRE does. I see your
Uh,
joke. No, yeah. So it's something that you're constantly learning from, humans that are doing this for ages and trying to imbibe that knowledge into this. But the difference is, as a human, you might be like good at doing solving one type of those problems or one set of tools or whatever, right? Your learning curve is much higher compared to like this agentic system, which if you build it once, it has the capability to kind of spread across multiple tools and multiple integrations and so on. So that's the advantage of having this, making an agent do this versus a human thing.
mm, yeah, interesting. You mentioned one keyword that I see quite often these days in
Mm,
LinkedIn and Twitter.
mm,
Sorry, I should say X, on
mm.
social media, basically. Context engineering.
Right.
So, what is context engineering, and how is it different from prompt engineering?
Okay. I think it's just like a mind shift. It's more of a rephrasing or rewording of the whole thing so that you look at it from a different perspective. So prompt engineering has always been this thing of, you know, I will give my instructions this way to make the model work, right? So if I were to kind of put it succinctly, I would say context engineering is like a subfield of prompt engineering. But what the main focus was when people said prompt engineering was, I will put this instruction at the top, I'll move the instruction to the bottom, things like that. I will write in all caps and all those things. That was the core of prompt engineering most of the time. But context engineering is like just being more deliberate about what information you give to the LLM rather than like, stuff everything in. You can't just,
Mm,
I know like there are a million tokens models these days,
mhm,
but does that mean I can give it like 1,000 of my documents and expect it to understand everything fully? Well,
mhm,
answer is not yet. At least
mhm,
right now we still need to reduce the amount of noise that we put into an LLM's context, and that's what is context
mhm.
engineering right there.
Yeah. I remember at the beginning of this year, I
Hmm.
remember seeing posts that RAG is dead because we have these models
Right,
that can just take your entire knowledge base and answer a
right,
question based on that.
right.
From what I see, RAG is not that yet, right?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
And the main idea is, yes, you technically, yes, there are models that can
Mm,
take your entire knowledge base, code base, whatever base, right?
yeah,
But then how good are they at
yeah,
using all the information you give it and how fast? Like probably you don't want to wait for too long
exactly.
for LLM to process, to go through like your super huge prompt
Yeah,
with everything. So probably you want to be smart about what kind of information you give to an LLM, right?
yeah. It is latency, it is cost, it
Mhm.
is also, I mean, think about it as garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're going to start putting a lot of noise in, then your model also has only so much to work with. I know they have become a lot more capable than they were before. As in, you can fill up to like, 32K context window or something. Beyond that, I have not seen many models do very well. Maybe the newer models start improving that, pushing that window a little further. But still, like if you wanted to work reliably every time, you would want to reduce that to smaller and smaller context window so that you don't like burden your LLM with like runtime processing everything rather than, doing some pre-processing beforehand. So I think this is where like us doing machine learning for a while, we have seen these kind of patterns. I think those skills come in handy when you're dealing with LLMs as well. So that's RAG is not really like dead per se, but also it doesn't mean that RAG can solve everything. It has its
Mhm.
shortcomings. So I think that's what people mean when they say that. It's just that we are now realizing a world where RAG has had shortcomings, where because LLM is this really smart thing, and then we are uh, the back end of that, the thing that supplies contexts into LLMs is this old system of information retrieval, which is historically not been designed for this kind of use
Mhm.
case, right? It is for
Yeah.
like, it'll give you 10 blue links and humans go click on things, and
Yeah.
that's what it was designed for. And now we are
Mhm.
trying to morph it into something that fits into uh,
Mhm.
solving this problem of context, feeding the
Mhm.
context into LLM.
But would you agree that RAG is one of the simplest examples of context engineering? So instead of, let's say,
Mm,
we have a database with, even if it's like, I don't know, a small database, 5,000 records,
mhm,
instead of giving the entire 5,000, we just select
mhm.
the top 10 most relevant ones.
Yeah.
And by providing that, we already engineer our context. So then
Mhm.
the LLM knows what to focus on instead of going through the entire knowledge base and understanding, okay, like this is relevant, this is not relevant.
Yeah, at a high level, I think it is that, but like along with that, there's a wrapper around it again,
Yeah.
which kind of presents this information in a way that
Mhm.
is much more conducive for the LLM to kind of understand. So let me give you an example. So you can do this chunking business of, take a lot of documents and chunk it into lines of 200 lines of text or whatever, right? And then you put that in as one chunk every time, and it's almost always very lossy way of chunking, right? Or if you kind of just break it by length, or just break it by paragraphs or things like that. Now, how do we do better in terms of embedding the whole context into that chunk, right? Of what has happened so far, like which document is this from, what is the question this is trying to answer, what have we learned so far. So there is still a bunch of engineering that you have to do around just this, chunking and putting your data into index, and that helps in RAG cases, at least in search cases, it helps quite a bit in improving the quality of your system.
What are the other examples of context engineering?
Well, a lot of agents, the way they work, right? So you kind of say, okay, these are the tools that I have available, and
Mm.
the question is asking for this. I have solved this problem in this way before, like giving an example. So that's
Mhm.
you're kind of influencing how the LLM thinks, and how do you make it produce an output in like the structured format and things
Mhm.
like that. So all those things are examples of your influencing the LLM
Mhm.
by engineering the context so that you can get something that
Mhm.
that is meaningful rather than just okay, these are all the logs, go look at it, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And in case of NewBird,
Mm.
what kind of context engineering do you have? Is it all variations of RAG where you index, I don't know, all the logs, or you're doing something else? Because
No, no,
I think this is where we started the conversation,
yeah,
right? You
yeah,
mentioned context engineering, that you do that,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a bit
so
of this and a bit of that. I can't tell you more than that, but it's basically um, we are doing something where we are influencing the LLM. Yes. RAG, you may not apply it everywhere. Let me just say that you may not apply RAG in like all these problems, even for the SRE use case or for search use case. Well, for search use case, when there are billions of documents, you would apply RAG for that. But for something like this, which is a very task specific thing, and you kind of have some domain knowledge as to know how do you do this. So instead, you would try to apply the right tools for it. So in my view, I view RAG or search IR as a tool in itself. So now make that a tool and
yeah.
then you can orchestrate that. So
Hmm.
use it when needed, right? It's not like what people are saying when they say RAG is dead is because RAG is a vanilla RAG, right? Like where you're
Hmm.
just doing this embeddings and vector search and then putting it into LLM. That is a very set workflow.
Yeah.
And what we are going more and more towards in the world of agents is getting rid of these set workflows
Hmm.
and making it as dynamic as possible.
Like
So
agentic RAG, right?
exactly. So agentic RAG is one thing, and agents is even further where you're taking RAG as a tool rather than
Hmm.
it's a means to an end. It's not
Yeah.
the whole
So
thing.
basically, what you mean is we have an agent.
Hmm.
The agent has some tools. One of them is search, which
Right.
performs search in
Yeah.
the database that we, I don't know, chunk and have done like all the things to
Mhm.
pre-process. But we let the LLM decide when it needs to,
If
if it
if
needs.
needed, it yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
So which, yeah, there's a lot of different ways in which you can actually query these kind of information, right? So you can do it
Mhm.
via search query, you can do it via saying, okay, it's in a table, get me stuff from the table, it's in MongoDB or something, get me all the uh, documents that have this value or something like that,
Mhm.
right? So it's all these are just tools, and knowing which tool to use when is something that we have to teach our agents, and they let them do the orchestration.
Yeah, and since we started talking about that, and we already, like I mentioned, Rack is dead, or Rack maybe is not dead, like, and the conclusion, or this is where the industry is kind of converging to, is Rack is one of the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm wondering, so what kind of business problems are good for these kind of solutions? Whether like classical Rack that is fixed flow, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe agentic Rack where it's one of the tools, for
Mm-hmm.
which problems it's still a good solution,
Mm-hmm.
and for which we don't really need RAG or AI at all. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
problems that we're trying now to solve with, all this AI stuff.
yeah, that's a good question. So I think RAG can do this thing of reducing a really large search space into something small, right? RAG can do well in when you have, first of all, large search space and the task is simple. The things like question answering based on like a piece of content or something like that. Those things, when you have, imagine Dropbox, right? So we
Mhm.
millions of documents you have put in there. You don't have to organize your data in very neat ways or anything, but this is the use case where you really have like a keyword that you want to go look for, or you want to find an answer to a question. So these are the use cases where RAG can help very easily, provided there's not like, there's this context of what you were doing till now, maybe, or what time is it, what time of day, things like that, basically what is happening right now. That kind of context, RAG kind of falls short in. But if it's just like finding the answer out of a lot of knowledge is present, and now in that I want to, do a needle in a haystack kind of a problem, then that's where RAG is still useful. And the minute these problems start getting complex, where you have multiple data sources and you want to do some dynamic planning, or integrating with multiple APIs, and you want to do write operations, for example. All these things is when you don't do RAG as much, you go to agents when you want to do something like that.
Can you give an example of of dynamic planning?
Yeah, so by dynamic planning, what I mean is whenever an input comes, you want your LLM or agent to be able to plan the trajectory it takes based on the input.
So like when
So
I get a task,
yeah,
I might think, how do I execute the task? Like, I don't know if I need to, I don't know, a pager duty notification comes,
yeah,
and I look at this, and maybe even subconsciously, I come up
mhm,
with a
exactly.
sequence of actions I need to execute. Like I need to
Yeah.
go there first, then here, here. Right? This is the plan.
Exactly, exactly. So like a very simple, easy to understand example would be like a calendar thing, right? So you have a calendar assistant or something and you're talking to it and say, I want to schedule a meeting for half an hour tomorrow with my manager or my skip level or something like that. So in this, as you see, there's a lot of these hidden, understandings of or context that I'm assuming that you know about me, that okay, I need a 30-minute meeting, and what time zone am I in, who is my manager, and what are their working hours, and things like that. Those are all the queries that the LLM has to come up with and go and say, okay, can I get the working hours from the calendar, can I see when the two of them are free, first, and like consult a different source to find out who is the manager she's talking about, right? And do they have a Google Calendar? Do they have Outlook Calendar? Like all these things are in a sense that the LLM is coming up with this plan as the input changes. Now, if my input changes to summarize my meeting notes from yesterday, what
Mm-hmm.
will it do? It doesn't have to go to Google Calendar or to get the notes. It'll go into Zoom or something like that, Zoom transcripts, and find all the meetings that happened yesterday and summarize them, things like that.
Does a tool like that exist?
We have been building it. I was building at least at Dropbox before I left. And yeah,
Okay, it sounds like something I want to have.
I know. We are not alone. Lots of people are actually building this kind of assistants
Because
right
I
now.
imagine, so the way I communicate with ChatGPT, I often just do voice recognition, tell it to do something, and then I check. So this is how I communicate. And I imagine that, uh, yeah, so I have an idea, and for me, instead
Mm,
of writing, I can just say, "Hey, what did we talk about
mm,
yesterday on the podcast with Ranjita? Like
mm.
we talked about agents. Can you please summarize?"
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah,
what we talked about, RAG. And it
yeah.
is like it goes there, like fetches the transcript, summarizes it, and gives it to
So
me.
easily doable.
Okay, I want to have that.
Okay, let's meet for a hack project then.
But you said Dropbox has it. I have Dropbox.
Yeah, Dropbox is building, yes.
But like that, do I need to put all the things to
So
in
right now
Dropbox?
the product that I was building on, I don't know what has changed since I left, but we were building this product called Dropbox Dash, which is like AI powered search and assistant and so on. So it helps with a lot of these um, use cases of productivity and connecting to all the SaaS that you use at your work and so on and so forth. So um, yeah, you should check it out.
Okay, I guess I need to have a paid account, right?
I do not know the answer to that right now, but
Yeah, I'm checking, and there
probably.
is a big, there is a link contact sales.
Okay.
That's a problem because I know Dropbox is used by enterprises, right? And these are the
Yes,
main target
exactly.
audience. Because
Exactly.
when multiple people use the same folders or Dropbox, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
That's because the content there becomes much more blown up, and discovering other people's,
mm.
documents and stuff becomes much more challenging. So it's a more of a fit there.
Yeah, I see we have some questions. I think
Mm,
at the beginning when we started talking about agents,
mm,
I used an example of frameworks.
mm,
I mentioned Pydantic AI and
mhm,
agents, OpenAI Agents SDK.
mm.
So, in your opinion, do we need to learn any frameworks? And if yes, what kind of frameworks we should learn to
Good
make our
question.
life easier? Or should we just implement everything from scratch?
Good question. So I think so far I've tried quite a few, and But to be honest, at work, I don't really use any of those things. One that really it kind of struck a chord with me was this thing called small agents. It's a Hugging Face transformers um, library that kind of transformed to this called small agents, SMOL
Hmm.
agents. Yeah, that's something that I really like because it's as I said, I'm biased towards like code-based agents, and it's a very programmatically thinking kind of agent, and that helps you kind of bootstrap if you want to let a framework do this for you. But I would still say build it from scratch. There's nothing like it, because you know what happens with these frameworks when you're building something. It's after a point, you have gotten into this complex state where you don't really understand what this agent is doing.
Hmm.
It's it becomes like a debugging nightmare. So
Yeah.
I would say start from scratch. What is an agent at the end of the day? It's a bunch of tools and a bunch of instructions, right? And you can implement your own choice of memory, your own choice of where your data sets, if you need to, query data sources, things like that. So that's what I would suggest.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. What do you think about LangChain?
LangChain has its uses, but I haven't really, connected very much with using LangChain agents as such.
Mm.
Even they were like pretty early on in terms of
Yeah.
agentic, invention. Like we were building this code agents at the time, and they had their own React framework type of
Mhm.
building agents, and I was a little underwhelmed by, the way it couldn't handle ambiguity, because you're doing interactions in natural language and stuff. But it has come a long way since then, and I'm sure they have like new types of agents that you can experiment with and so on.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So when you mentioned debugging nightmare and trying to
Mm,
figure out what's
mm,
wrong, for
mm.
me it was like LangChain. Because like this agents SDK from OpenAI is kind of
Mm,
very light wrapper around plain
mhm,
API.
mhm.
So it kind of like I understand what's happening there. It's more or less clear. But with LangChain, oftentimes I have no idea what's happening,
Yeah.
and like it's very hard to debug.
Yeah,
So I
because
was
it's a
thinking if it's just
complex
me
mesh of
or
things, right? So
yeah,
yeah, it's like multiple things talking to each other in natural language. It can get a little confusing to understand
yeah.
what's going on.
And when you suggested to implement your own agent or
Mhm,
agentic framework from scratch,
mhm,
I
mhm,
agree. So this is something I did too, and it
mhm,
really helps to understand what's happening. And then, like I don't know, if you have multiple agents, that's realizing that one agent can be just a tool of another agent,
mhm.
right? So I think it helps to understand like how these things that people are talking about, how they actually work.
Yeah.
It's really helpful for understanding.
Very true. I think eventually we'll come into a reality where agentic platforms are something that is, usable as is, and there's like, I mean, including us, we have been dreaming about this at Dropbox. Me and my manager, we were like talking about it for a while now, of having this agentic dream of agentic marketplace where you can, build agents of the same sort, and people can, buy agents from each other, or, talk to each other,
Oh,
things
that would
like
be
that.
convenient.
But
Yeah.
we are far
Well, with
from that, to
MCP,
be
we're
honest.
kind of with MCP, we're kind of one step closer there, right?
Right. I mean, MCP is it solves the problem of, having one protocol where you can talk to things, but that's about it. After that, it's a
I
lot of
also mean
heavy
like this
lifting.
marketplaces, or how is it called? Basically,
It's
where you can get, okay, like for example, in your case,
mm,
you have, I don't know if this is something you deal with, but I imagine if you're building an AI as site
SRE.
reliability engineer, SRE,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Then you need to be able to access DataDog, New Relic, I
Yeah.
don't know, AWS, how it's called, CloudWatch. Anyways, like
CloudWatch.
all
Yeah.
these
Mm-hmm,
systems,
mm-hmm,
right? And then like if you have MCP for each of them, your job becomes easier.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So that, I mean, it becomes easier in one way, but not always. In the sense that, so I would say MCP is more of um, like you have your own custom tools, let's say, and you don't want to provide the swagger of that, or like, your open API spec or something like that, where, all the methods are there, all the signatures are there. You want to kind of abstract it in this way of doing MCP. And also you might have more context on these things than I do. So MCP has this way of like describing your tool and so on and so forth. So that is useful in the sense that you can just give me an MCP server rather than
Mm-hmm.
telling me what are the tools, and having to sit with you on a call and integrating with
Yeah.
all the tools that you have. So those kind of abstractions, when you don't have to know the full details of things, yes, it's useful. um, but what I mean by like agent market space is like something that has been built to solve a particular task, let's say like the whole task, the agent itself. So the MCP is solving the problem of tools.
Wait, doesn't
But
ChatGPT have this? I think they
yeah,
tried to
it did
do
have
this
the plugins,
market
right? ChatGPT
plugins.
plugins.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of similar, not
that's the
exactly,
idea.
but
Yeah, that's the idea.
mm,
But I think doing it in a more like agentic
mm,
way, where you can actually then compose from one agent to another and so on and so forth.
mm,
I think
mm.
that's where um, that would be a nice place to be. I don't know if industry is actually really putting effort into that, because in some cases agent collaboration makes sense, but in a lot of places people are like, no, I want to shield my technology and things like that.
Yeah.
And so let's see where it goes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How do you go about evaluations? Because in case of RAG, when it's a
Mm,
fixed flow,
mm,
evaluating is uh, it's not super complicated, right? So you
yeah.
kind of know what the flow is, so then you can evaluate it. But in case we are talking about agents, how do you go about evaluation? Because not only we need to evaluate the answer, but also we need to evaluate if tools were called or not,
Mhm.
what kind of parameters they were called with, and things like that. So how do you go about that?
Yeah, great question. And I would like to point out one contradiction earlier from your statement, which is you said it's easy to write evals for RAG. Uh,
Mm. Is it
it's
not?
not.
Okay.
It's not. Like we learned it the hard way, and like it takes time to build a system, right? So imagine like there are these public benchmarks that are available for search, for question answering, and so on and so forth, like Squad, or um, what else is there, like Quad is from Wikipedia, that there's like all those QA data sets, right? So those ones are, if you look at it and say, okay, I will just pick my model based on that benchmark, you are going to go horribly wrong in your system, because
Yeah.
it's you're not evaluating your system, you're evaluating
Yeah.
just that model's capability, right?
Hmm.
And it's very likely that the model already has seen that data set and so on, and it's
Yeah.
so that challenge is there. So how do you kind of come up with a data set that fits into your system and is representative of what your real user
You need to
queries
create
are going to
yourself,
be? You need
right?
to create it yourself, and
Yeah.
it's still a very very much unsolved um,
Hmm.
area of for industries to ripe for picking.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people that are trying to solve
Hmm.
this. There are a lot of companies in this space that are trying to make it easier to manage evaluations and
Hmm.
create data sets, synthetic data, and so on and so
Hmm.
forth, but it's not there yet. Now when it comes to agents, of course multiply that a little bit, because now you have not one but
Many
multiple
flows,
LLM
right?
prompts. and and you need to have, first of all, do you have to have evaluation for each of those prompts? You have
Hmm.
to have evaluations for, first of all, are the tools doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? So this kind of challenge, the way I have solved it before, and like the team at Dropbox and we were working on this for a while, and the way we came up with this was like having some sort of very similar to software engineering tests, right?
Hmm.
So like if you think of the minute you step into agentic world, think of it as like a software system rather than
Hmm.
I mean, you do have to keep the probabilistic part of it in mind, of course, because it will not behave the same way every time.
Yeah.
But as a software system, as the whole thing, you have an input, you have a predictable output. Now how do you write integration tests for software? You write it
Hmm.
by mocking the input and saying, okay, this is the input that I give it, and then it should reliably give me this output, right?
Mhm.
It's a painstaking process, but once you kind of set like enough volume of these cases, depending on how complex the system is, like for something like a calendar agent that I talked about, like 200, 300 test cases
Mhm.
of that sort will help remove doubts from your mind that actually this will not work. But for something like an SRE agent, it's a lot more complex, because now when you're mocking, you have to mock like all these data sources, like
Mhm.
logs and metrics and whatnot, and
Yeah.
it's but it is doable. Unfortunately, that's the path to take right now.
Mhm. So what you mock in this case is tools, because tools need
Yes.
they communicate with external services,
Yeah.
but in your integration test, you don't want to uh, communicate with external services. So you replace them with some local services or like
Exactly.
mocks.
Mocks. Yeah.
But what you check is that these local services are actually the agent
Mm.
actually tries to talk to them, tries to communicate
Exactly.
with them, right? And then
Yes.
this could be your assertion that okay, for this prompt,
Mhm.
I don't know, set up a meeting with my manager. So we
Mm.
first talk to like I don't know the HR system that figures out who your
Who the
manager
manager
is,
is and so on and so forth. Yeah. Yeah.
and then there should be two calls for checking
So I
the.
wouldn't go that deep, Alexi. So
Okay.
the thing is, now this is where the LLM nature of things comes in, right? So it's possible that there are two paths to accomplish the same goal.
Yeah.
So if it's able to do that with some other method,
Uh-huh.
then it's still okay, right? I mean, as long as it's not like regurgitating without any tool
Mm,
calls, then you're kind of safe. You just have to
mm,
make sure that it's actually consulting the true source. So the way you would do that is like, say these are the sources that I want it to have, and
mhm,
in what way it made the calls to the sources. It called it multiple times or single one time. Like for example, let me give you for org chart, there can be two ways of finding out who my skip level is, right?
mm,
Maybe it's just in like the user's own, okay, my skip level, right? Like
mhm,
manager's manager, it's just there. Or I can go uh, build like a graph of
mhm,
the org chart and say I will traverse up
mhm,
until like two hops, right?
mm.
So there are two different ways of doing this, but it's both are okay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So as long as the end goal is met, I think it's okay, because now this is only we're talking about two different data sources. Now imagine
Mhm.
adding
Yeah.
like 10 more. It's not going to be the same every
Mhm.
time.
So what we can evaluate is not only tool calls, or sometimes we might not even want to evaluate this because there are multiple ways to achieve this same goal, but
Yeah.
we evaluate if the goal was achieved,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So maybe there is a final thing like uh, create a calendar invite, and this is
Yeah.
what we want to assert for.
Yeah.
And all other steps, they're interesting to know, but for us, the main thing in this process is the tool with I don't know, create calendar invite, email one, email two, time
Mm.
slot
Hmm.
is what should be invoked, right? And this
Yes,
is what we
exactly.
assert for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Something
Okay.
like that.
But it
Yeah.
requires a lot of domain knowledge, I guess. This is not
It
something,
does. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think it's like making it super generic has not happened yet, because
Yeah.
like these are very specific things.
Okay. I'm looking at the list of questions we prepared. I think
Mm.
we covered maybe one of them only today. Maybe two. But it was super fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you're very knowledgeable in this topic, and it was great pleasure to talk to you. I learned a few new things. Um, so
Thank you.
I could keep asking you forever. But yeah, at some point we need to stop, and I think this should be now because it's been 1 hour. I
Oh,
didn't even
okay. Wow,
notice
I
how
didn't
time,
realize.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
time flies. So thanks a lot for joining us today.
Of
It
course.
was a great pleasure. Thanks a lot, everyone, for
Thank you.
joining us today too. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
thank
there's
you,
actually a
Alexi.
funny question.
Mhm.
Uh, the question is how soon can you replace your own SRE with your agent? You don't need to
Oh,
reply
oh.
to a
Yeah, no,
response.
it's a good question. It's a good question.
But
Yes.
maybe like if I were the SRE, I should be like,
No.
right?
Yeah, no. Yeah, we'll get back to you. You will watch our space, NewBird AI. You will see.
Okay. 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 Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we see
All right.
you soon in our next events. So
Thank you
thanks a
so
lot.
much.